What are 5 albums that changed your life? And I'm not talking about your 5 favorite albums, the 5 albums that you think are the best ever made. I'm talking about 5 albums that, for whatever reason, at a certain point in your life, you heard them and they changed something. These could be albums that you don't even like anymore, that you don't listen to anymore, but for whatever reason, they're an integral part of who you are in your own personal story. I think this is a really interesting question and an interesting way to take a journey through someone's personal music history. Ajax, do you agree? Oh no, you're gonna. All right, well, he's here now. So, since I think this is an interesting way to take a journey through someone's personal musical story, I thought it would be really cool to ask famous artists this and music industry people and just hear how they were influenced, how music changed their lives. So, here's an opportunity to do that. I hope you enjoy it. I am super excited to be talking to the absolute legend that is Jaret Reddick. He's had and continues to have just an incredible music career. I've been listening to his songs my entire life. So this is a huge honor, super fun for me. Jaret, thanks so much for being here. This is great.
Thank you, Mal. That was a very kind intro. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. As you said, both of us kind of recovering from Warp Tour
Yep,
this past weekend, and it's just such a good time in music right now. And man, I'm happy to still be a part of it.
awesome. Yeah, yeah, I'm recovering. I got my tea, so
There you
hopefully
go.
that'll keep me
Mine
going.
is iced, but I have
There
some
you
as
go.
well.
Well, you're going to be talking to us today about 5 albums that changed your life, shaped your personal music history.
Yeah.
So, before we did this, I was reading some interviews earlier, some stuff you've done in the past, and it sounds like you have a pretty wide range of influences, everyone from like Johnny Cash to Motley Crue to Descendants. So, I think this is
Yeah.
going to be really interesting to just kind of walk through your personal history of music.
My family were not I wouldn't say that they weren't musical in the sense that they were musicians. I mean, my mom would kind of sit behind the piano and do stuff and it was cool, but really there was just music playing all the time.
Sure.
And then once I found music and then music found me. And so yeah, it's going to be a little bit all over the place, but
I love
probably
that.
it'll probably make a little bit more sense than you think.
Yeah, my family was kind of the same way. A lot of soft rock, but it started my love of music. So, well, if you want to get started with number one, let's just jump right into it.
Sounds great. Well, I'm going to go chronologically, if you don't mind, at least
Perfect.
at first. As I said, my parents are very musical. I grew up listening to whatever they listened to in the car, whatever my brother was listening to at the time. And so, in the growing up, it was a lot of Waylon and Willie, Kenny Rogers, Dolly
Yeah.
Parton, the storytellers, but it was also Donna Summer and Neil Diamond, Jackson Brown, and it was very much a wide palette, And then when I was in grade school, Michael Jackson got big, and John
Mhm.
Cougar Mellencamp, who was just John Cougar at the time, and those were kind of like my first, like, okay, whatever. I listen to music. But
Yeah.
when it first like really, really bit me, I was in school and it was in sixth grade. If you took a speed test in multiplication and math, if you got 100 on it, you got to have the rest of the day for free while it was practiced. And
That's
this kid,
great motivation.
right? So this kid named Norman brought his cassette Walkman with only fast forward on it to school, and I heard Ozzy Osbourne's Crazy Train for the first time, and I
Nice.
was just like, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You have to remember that Ozzy was very scary back then, and I
Mm,
didn't know what he sounded like. I just knew the folklore and the
sure.
hoopla and how scary he was. Well, that basically took me to the record store to buy an album, and but that same day I bought Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue. Shout at the Devil by Motley Crue changed the course of everything for me. It was the first time I really got into a band, but it was like I was obsessed with the way that they looked and what they talked about and how they sounded. And every song on the album was just better than the next. So I got a drum set for Christmas that year,
Nice.
and I wanted to be Tommy Lee. And
We all did. That.
it's such a funny thing to talk about now, to talk about that, because over the last, especially 10, 15 years, to say, that you were led to music by Ozzy or Motley Crue, they're such cartoon characters of
Yeah.
themselves. People just don't know how cool they were or how
Mhm.
just insanely just groundbreaking it all was.
Mm.
As simple
Yeah.
as the crew was, just how what they were creating, and helping to create on the Sunset Strip there. And
Mhm.
easily the most influential and best hair metal band of all time. I do like Too Fast for Love more, but Shout at the Devil is the one that I bought.
The one that hooked you.
Heard Too Young to Fall in Love. She's got the looks that kill. Just even the opening in the beginning, and you're
Yeah.
just, I want to listen to every word that he said. My first one's going to be Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil.
Nice. I think that's really interesting talking about how like your parents were listening to those storytellers from like Kenny Rogers, Dolly Parton, that kind of stuff. And Motley Crue, in kind of a weird way, is the same, but they're telling a story with their whole persona and
Right.
who they are is telling this story that super appealing to like younger kids, especially.
Well, interestingly enough, though, I mean, Dr. Feelgood is a story,
Yeah, for sure.
Without You is a story. They did sort of get into that whole aspect of things, and there were other hair metal bands that did that at the time. Most of it was just like, hey, girls, and but that influence comes back in my life later when I
Mhm.
start to write songs, because Bowling
Okay,
for Soup songs are stories.
cool. Yeah. And so I was going to ask how you see like influences from that album in what you're writing, but I'm guessing
Yeah.
through
Well,
that.
it's what I didn't realize at the time, and what's interesting is, when you go back and you sort of think that because I was into Motley Crue, that's all that was happening at the time. But the punk movement was well underway, and what I didn't know and until way later in life was just how much the music I was listening to was being influenced by punk rock, by how they were taking those Stooges and all of these other bands that and theatrical things like David Bowie and stuff, and combining it
Yeah.
into this thing and creating this whole thing. I wouldn't have known that I was already being pulled towards this simpler form of music that was so expressive. Motley Crue was one of those bands where, like, I think they really figured it out, like how to keep it. Not that things are simple. They're some of the guitar parts are really complicated, and obviously it's hard to sing.
Yeah.
They did sort of keep it structurally simple, and the riffs were simple, and all of that. And I realized why I was so drawn to it.
Awesome.
As I look back on it now.
Yeah, they've always reminded me of like New York Dolls in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's what I meant to say when I said the Stooges. I meant to say, yeah, New York
It's
Dolls, like that kind of thing.
yeah.
That's really where they were drawing that influence,
Mhm.
and the bands that they were sort of like groundbreaking, but
Yeah.
then they were putting that attitude and the glamour and it all seems it's so funny to me, like, because I remember just them being this bigger than life band,
Yeah.
and it's like how when you go to Planet Hollywood and you see a Star Wars gun up close,
Yeah.
and like, it's so now when I look back at the pictures and I'm like looking at their outfits and I'm like, what is that, a telephone cord? And it legit was like
Yeah.
Nick Six had a telephone cord wrapped around his leg,
Yeah.
and one of his outfits, and it's just it's so crazy because I just remember, I was doing the same thing. I buying rabbit skins and pinning them through my ankles so it looked like I had furry boots, and that's true, by the way.
Nice.
I wouldn't buy a rabbit skin now, guys. Seriously, don't come at me. This was 80s, and it seemed fine. We carried their feet around with keys on them. I don't know.
I'm gonna I'm gonna clip that out of context and just
Yeah.
rage bait, get all the views.
Carried their feet around with keys on them or whatever.
Yeah.
What the fuck is wrong with this guy?
All right. So that's album one.
Yeah.
Ready to move in album two?
So, I stayed in that sort of world of hair metal
Mhm.
for years, and I started to listen to heavier stuff, and then an album came out by a band called Testament. I had been listening to Testament a little bit. They had the record called Legacy and the New Order. But when Practice What You Preach came out, again, it was just like this, that, like, I want to sound like that. Like, I want to be able to sing, but I want us to be heavy and like,
Mhm.
let's shred. And so by that time, I was kind of becoming less of a drummer and more of a front man, because
Okay.
of necessity. We couldn't
Sure.
find a singer, but I could get by, and get through the
Yeah.
gigs. So Testament, man, it's just Chuck Billy's voice. He's just so heavy, but he can actually sing, and he has a scream that is only his. Nobody else can do it. And then of course Alex Skolnick on the guitar. I've never been a shredder, still not, but I like to listen to people who can play music. Still to this day, I could still just sit there and listen to a Testament record and just hear what he's doing back there, and the counter melodies that he's doing on on the guitar while the riff is happening over it, and it's just a magical band. And
Awesome.
that particular record was just huge for me. I mean, that was literally like, okay, like we're gonna be heavy now, and so we started getting heavier and heavier.
That's a band that I actually don't know. So that's fun.
Yeah.
I get to
Well,
go listen to them after this.
yeah, five great records in a row, and I'm sure they're all great. That's kind of when I stopped listening to them,
Sure.
is when we get to this next album. I mean, they say that if there were a big five, they would be in the big five of the
Okay.
middle. So,
Man, it's embarrassing that I don't know them then.
yeah, I don't know what the hell's wrong with you.
I just got to delete my music history YouTube channel, I guess. When you look back at like these albums now, Motley Crue, Testament, do you still kind of feel the same way you did back when you first heard them? Or has your thoughts changed? How are you approaching them from a different perspective now?
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Like I feel like most music that I hear that was important to me back then, I can feel the same feelings, smell the same smells and
Sure.
stuff like that. I hate that Motley Crue has become just sort of, again, the cartoon character of
Hmm.
themselves. I still have the utmost respect, and they're still one of my favorite bands in the world. I mean, it really, signing your breakup in blood and then coming back and doing stadiums is fucking weird, man. Again, I don't know, and it's not
Sure.
member changes. It's not that, because
Hmm.
Bowling for we had a membership change. We just had a guy retire, and we're still at it. And I feel like we're still delivering a product that is, something that people desire. And maybe they are too. Testament, yeah, it makes me feel the same. I feel like maybe just public commentary and stuff has really affected, the whole Motley Crue thing for me.
That makes sense.
But I mean, they kind of do it to themselves too. The Tommy
Yeah.
Lee circus has been crazy for years and years and years, and Nikki Sixx not playing his own instrument anymore, and
Mm.
it's just weird.
Yeah.
But so I don't really think I have the same nostalgic, not quite the love, but
Sure.
again, I would still say I still credit them for you know changing my life, and the course of which
Awesome.
it was going to take.
All right. So moving on to number three.
I'm going to go ahead and I know greatest hits aren't great for this kind of interview, but it
There are no
is
rules here. We can do
okay.
whatever we want.
It is the album that I heard, and so I was going into college at this time, and again, I was in a really heavy band.
Mhm.
We were doing more like Obituary and
Wow.
Slayer, and Death, and I mean, just really heavy. And this kid, his name was Shrub Roundtree, and
Great name.
I know his first name was actually Greg, but they called him Shrub, and his last name is Roundtree. But Shrub and I and Lance, the original drummer of Bowling for Soup, would end up starting the band that preceded Bowling for Soup.
Okay.
So 2 years before that. But
Okay.
what led to that was hearing The Descendants and the album Summer. The Descendants, this is the kind of the number two thing. Motley Crue changed the course. Testament, just sort of like kind of kept it going in a
Right.
direction. The Descendants pulled everything off the table in a horrible magic trick, and it all went crashing to the ground. I was like, I'm doing this. I want to play this. I want to do simple, heavy guitar, fast drums, but I want to sing, and I want to sing about girls. Like, I've been in this band where, like, to write originals, you had to have a medical dictionary because words had to have 7 syllables, and I was just like, what do you even, I don't know what to write about, like I
Right.
wrote a song about a serial killer and it was not good, and it's just super cheesy. And then I was like, man, farting girls, at the time they were into coffee. I really wasn't, but I was like,
Yeah.
that seems like something I could get into,
Yeah.
like this is fucking great. I mean, I just put everything I had into that. And then so that led me to discovering their band that
Mhm.
was still together at the time, called All.
Yeah.
Way more musical version of the Descendants,
Mhm.
way more complicated. Loved it. not really what I wanted to play, but
Sure.
absolutely loved it. But also led me to early Green Day, Propaganda, Bad Religion, No Effects,
Just down the rabbit hole.
down the rabbit hole. And basically the stew started brewing, the
Mhm.
soup. It started brewing. That pretty much started the course for, what would literally become my life. That was a few years before Bowling for Soup started, which is 31 years
Mhm.
now. So that was probably 33, 34 years ago. It was on from that point on.
Love that. It was what album? What Descendants album did you say it was?
It's called Summary. So it's their
Okay.
greatest hits
Oh,
before
right. Greatest hits. Okay.
it's their greatest hits of all the stuff they did before they broke up the
Sure.
first
Before the,
time.
yeah.
So it's all before Everything Sucks. So it's
Okay.
basically the greatest hits up until Everything Sucks.
Yeah. Because it
It's
seems
crazy.
like most people would say Milo Goes to College. So it was surprising that you said like a different one. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's
Well, I
kind of
think a
cool.
lot of those songs
Art. Yeah.
are on that record because they were sort of getting it figured out by that time. It's got a lot of the I want to be a bear and some of the like the funny the Wiener Schnitzel and like some
Hmm.
of the just the comedy stuff too,
Yeah.
which I think was a big part of like of what drew me to them. Like I'm a stand-up comedy fan. I was an actor as a kid.
Oh,
I like funny, and I've always been sort of the funny fat kid. And so when I found this band that sounded like I wanted to sound and was also funny, I was just like, what?
yeah.
This is what the world's been missing. I just never even knew that it was really a thing.
That's awesome. Yeah. Bowling for Soup is definitely in that Descendants vein. So that makes a ton of sense to me.
I take that as the biggest compliment in the world. And just the fact that I can call, most of the guys in that band a friend
I love that.
is is one of the things where it's just like it's just awesome.
Yeah. That's so cool.
All right, cool. So I'm gonna say five because I'm probably gonna go backwards.
Okay.
But I'm gonna say number four. I'm gonna tell you about the next time that music changed my life.
Let's go.
I Bowling for Soup was hard at it, and we were plugging away, and we had gotten dropped from our label, and I think it would have been very easy. Things in my life were going a little bit crazy, and it would have been pretty easy for me to self-destruct. In fact, I almost did. But Dave Lake from the band Diesel Boy was visiting me. We were just hanging out, and we were writing songs, but really he was going through some shit, I think, and just came to hang out. And he goes, "Have you heard Frank Turner?" And I go, "No." And he goes, "You gotta check out Frank Turner. Listen to this album, Love Iron
Well,
Song."
I guess I should confess that I am starting to get old.
I
Latest music
went and got that album, Love Iron Song, and I will never forget hearing it for the first time and how this just restoration of love for music and substance in music and just hope and and just I just was like, holy shit, I fucking love music again. Like this is crazy. This is so good. And I just could not get enough of it.
Mhm.
And so went back and started listening to everything that Frank is doing, started keeping up with his stuff. But the Love Iron song, I knew Proof Rock before he got famous, is just such a fucking great song. And then there's Long Live the Queen. The first time I heard it, I literally cried.
Wow.
And then there's the music is my substitute for love. It's just like, what is happening? Like I've had many different girls inside my bed, but only one or two inside my head. And you're like, what? Who the fuck? Where did that come from? And
Yeah.
just like, so I was just absolutely, it restored everything. And I just became a music fan again.
I love
And
that.
Frank and I now are close and touring together. And but
Nice.
I still have his logo tattooed
Nice.
on me. I can't say I have very many of my friends' bands
Hmm.
tattooed on me, but I have a few, and that's one of them. An unbelievable album that really, really I needed it at that time, and I think really just re-upped my faith in what it was that even I was doing in this whole music world.
So you said like before you heard that album, things were going a little bit haywire. Were you falling out of love with music at that point? And
I
then
was
it kind
just,
of
it was
just
just all
tired of it.
stale. I was just
Yeah.
tired of it, Like, I mean, everything new that I heard was it's not against anybody that was putting out music. I heard music that I liked. I
Hmm.
just didn't hear anything that I wanted to be invested in. I
Sure.
wasn't hearing things. And again, I was going through a lot in my personal life, and I was a dad, and I think it's about the beginning of the end of my marriage at the
Mhm.
time, and I think there's just a lot happening, and it sort of we were kind of about to sort of take a break in Bowling for
Mm.
Soup. There's just a lot happening in my life, and I needed that restoration, and
Sure.
and there it was.
So cool. Do you hear any of that album now? Like since you listened to it and made such an impact, were you like, oh, this song that I'm writing, it kind of like I see the influences from
I
Frank Turner.
don't. And it's funny. I've thought about this a lot. I've thought about why I don't really get influenced by him writing wise. And I
Hmm.
think it's just because he is about like the lyrics aspect of things and the poeticness of it. Like he
Hmm.
can write a hook, obviously, but like we just are in completely different worlds writing
Sure.
wise. I think I could sit down and write a song with Frank and it would be really good and it would combine both of our things, but I don't really, I don't know. I've never really felt like that I hear him in anything that I do. But at the end of the day, though, everything we do in life sort of lends itself to what it is we're creating, right?
Hmm.
So who knows? I'm sure it pops in somewhere.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's really cool. I love
Yeah.
those albums that just like remind you why you started listening to music in the first place. It's really cool. All right, we're on to number five now. Home stretch.
Home stretch here. Well, I'm gonna go. I'm actually gonna. I'm gonna pick one of my own records. I
Nice.
think a lot of my albums did indeed change my life for the better. Obviously, there's albums that got us attention and then a
Hmm.
record deal and then there's that got us on television and got us Grammy nominations and gold records and all of this.
Yeah.
But I have to say, and continue to go chronologically, Pop Drunk Snot Bread again came at just a really magical time.
In the streets now we complain when cars drive too fast
We had made Drunk Dynasty and Lunch Drunk Love,
Mhm.
but we hadn't made like a just a really fun BFS record in a bit. And the pandemic was happening and Eric had left the band, so Rob was new. So we hadn't made a record with Rob. I just feel like Pop Drunk Snot Bread just really, really put the exclamation mark on the revitalization of Bowling for Soup.
Nice.
Again, we never broke up. Took a break in 2013, but there's, it things ebb and flow, and the
Hmm.
pandemic put a real big damper on things. All of a sudden our calendars were emptying instead of filling, and so we tested for COVID, rented a tour bus, took the tour bus to the Poconos, and spent 2 weeks up there and made an album. And
Nice.
I'm very proud of it. It's a fan favorite record. I know Rob is loves it to death because he has two co-writes on there,
Yeah.
and I just feel like and it talk about motivation. Like when I hear something from that record, I am absolutely motivated to let's go,
Yeah.
let's do something, and that's what we're talking about right now. So I think
Yeah.
it's a good number five to pick so that I can say, hey, we're that's that record is probably the reason that we're still going so strong and we're about to go do another one.
Awesome. Yeah. Excited to hear that. So,
Thank
did
you.
you have any of those songs written before you went to the Poconos, or was it just we're just show up, see what happens?
No, so I basically gave it like a 6-8 week lead time and just got them done,
Nice.
and but I was still kind of writing when I went there, and it was a different experience because a lot of times the records, since Sorry for Partying, really, Linus of Hollywood will produce the records, and so he comes in and like we sort of work through the material, and if there's unfinished stuff, we finish it together. Well, he wasn't able to make the trip, it was COVID, and he
Right.
lives in LA. We went to the other coast, and he has pets, and and obviously nobody really wanted to get sick. And so we went and made this record, with him in mind to be involved in it, but the songs had to exist. So we did a couple of co-writes over the internet and I did a couple of other ones. As I said, Rob and I did some stuff, but I was literally just sort of like what I call cramming for exams. I was just trying to get all the material that I had together, and Brad Pitt just sort of like came just as a funny little thing that I was doing and ended up being a single. And so yeah, it's just really, really organic.
Love that. Those are some of the best albums. More
I
organic.
totally agree. Absolutely.
Those are the five albums. That was really fun, taking a little journey through your music
Thank you.
history. I definitely want to give you the space though to promote what you're doing. You mentioned at Warped that you're going on tour with Simple Plan and 4 Years Strong and
So,
303.
Simple Plan, 303, and Lolo.
Okay.
And yeah, that starts in August, and we go through first week or so of September. We're headlining Wembley Arena December 13th. It'll be
It's
the Rolling
crazy.
Stones' biggest headline show ever, and can't wait for that. And then we've got some obviously the next two Warp Tours, but we're
Mhm.
also touring to the Warp Tour in
Nice.
November. And lots of new music coming out. We've got a live album done from the Hangover You Don't
Nice.
Deserve 20th anniversary. We've got a covers album almost done. New material coming, and then country wise, I've got a covers record almost done and a new original record almost done. So
Man.
uh, follow me on social media,
Yeah.
and I'll keep you up to speed.
So many good things. Congratulations on
Good
all the
thing.
success. It's
And
really
Phineas and
exciting.
Ferb is back.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you so much. This was so great. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you taking the time to hop on. I'll leave all your links in the description. Everyone go follow him. Make sure you check out what he's up to.
Thanks for having me.
Hope you enjoyed that conversation. I want to give again a huge shout out to Jaret Reddick and his whole team. It was so great working with his team. Jaret was awesome. Is felt like within 5 minutes I was just talking to an old friend. He was super cool, and I really appreciate him coming on and doing this and being willing to do this video. He makes really fun, interesting content on Instagram, TikTok, all of that stuff, as well as his music is of course legendary. So please click the links in the description below, follow him, see what he's got going on. Also, I've started my own Instagram page. I'm going to be posting like what happened today in music history and other music history content that I find that is interesting. So link is in the description below if you want to follow that. Again, thanks so much for watching this video. Huge shout out to Jaret and his whole team. Thank you so much for making this happen. It was so cool to get to have this conversation. And another huge thank you to the members of this channel, our musical historians. Thank you for being a part of this, for making this possible, just wanting to come alongside me as I do this. It really means a lot that you want to partner with me in that way. So thank you so much to our members.